Welcome to the next version of Lead With Me. It's a series of podcasts that is done by the San Antonio Manufacturing Association. And I'm Doug Carlberg. I'm the chairman of the San Antonio Manufacturers Association and also the president of Carlberg Consulting. Today, we have Professor Dr. Dan Shunk, Emeritus from Arizona State University, part of their Industrial Engineering College. Dan, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Good to be here. Dan and I have known each other longer than I want to admit. And back when we both had a bunch of hair and young engineers trying to make it in our career. And early on, I met Dan shortly after he got out of the Air Force, and I want to hear a little bit more about that. When I was heading up the Industrial Modernization Program in Tucson, and we were funding a research at Arizona State. So, Dan, tell me a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, it's first of all good to be back in San Antonio. Good to be with you. Good to see all of our friends. My journey began many years ago. Went to Purdue. Grew up in northwestern Indiana. Went to Purdue. Didn't know what I wanted to do, and so
like most of us,
they had a really good 1-hour seminar, and every College of Engineering would get an hour to sell you on what they were doing. Well, Jim Barony, from Industrial Engineering at Purdue, handed out M&M candies, little nuggets of M&M candies, man and machine, and that caught my attention. And from then on, I've been an industrial engineer. I'm slow. It took me 10 years to get through Purdue, but finished up with the doctorate. But during the course of my studies, met a lot of great people. And Muzz Bootwalla and Ken Melhope at Cincinnati Millicron sponsored my research. I did my dissertation on group technology way back in the early 70s. So cellular manufacturing and group technology was something quite novel at the time. And they mentioned to me that the Air Force was creating a program focusing on using the computer to make airplanes. This was early 70s, 1972, 73, 74. So I actually interviewed for a job, and after my educational delay from the U.S. Air Force, I went on active duty. I'd been at Purdue so long, came in as a first lieutenant rather than a second lieutenant on ed delay. And we formed the ICAM program. ICAM stands for Integrated Computer-Aided Manufacturing.
I know it quite well.
Yeah, you do, because we were at the time migrating the aerospace industry from what was called now Industry 2.0 to Industry 3.0. Okay?
Yeah.
So we didn't have laptops and we didn't have internet. My goodness, how can we live? Okay. But we had the mini computer, and Ken Olson at Digital Equipment and others had created this mini computer, and we were beginning to apply it on the manufacturing floor, in the office. And my job, since they were totally diverse activities being built by a lot of different companies, our job in the Air Force was to synthesize that, to put it together, to make it work together. And so Dennis Wisnowski and Bill Harris and I formed the ICAM program, $100 million of U.S. taxpayer money invested to create integrated techniques like IGES, Initial Graphics Exchange Standard. We had stick figure graphics that didn't communicate with one another. So Roger Nagel at NIST put that together for us. During that time, met a lot of people, met a lot of great people. And after my 4 years of Air Force duty, active duty, went into industry, worked at Rockwell, worked at International Harvester, became vice president of GCA, had modernization work going around the country. And I was doing Intel layout for Fab 7. My team was helping Intel with Fab 7 outside Albuquerque.
That was state of the art at the time.
That was state of the art. And then we were also doing USA 1 for Motorola, now NXP, down in Chandler. And I stopped in to see Dick Smith, an old friend of mine who ran industrial engineering at ASU, Arizona State.
I know Dick. I know him quite well.
You knew him. And so Dick said, we're forming a manufacturing research center here at ASU, a multidisciplinary, cross-functional research center. You'd be perfect as the director. I'll bet you we could offer you a 50% pay cut in order to come to ASU to join us.
So I got to think about that for a minute.
50% pay cut to come to ASU. Okay, so this was December, January 1983, 1984.
That's about the time that you and I met.
That's correct. And I called my wife that night. I said, Gail, you're not going to believe it. Unsolicited, I got a job offer today from ASU. She said, what'd they offer? I said, a 50% pay cut in what I'm making. She said, take the job.
Well, family's important, and we're gonna talk more about that.
We're going to talk about family here in a minute.
At the end.
So that's my journey. My task has been to get industry to migrate from industry 2.0 to 3.0. Now, as a senior individual, I'm trying to facilitate the migration from 3.0 to 4.0, and that's where I'm publishing today. That's where I'm doing most of my work today.
And actually, you're speaking at the San Antonio Manufacturers Association CEO dinner tonight on that topic.
On that topic.
I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, the notion of automation and artificial intelligence and additive manufacturing and Internet of Things are mind-boggling in terms of what their capabilities are. And these young kids are mastering the art, and us white hairs, we're going to struggle to keep up.
Well, that's for sure. And matter of fact, we're going to film that presentation tonight, and it will be released later after the podcast.
Yeah. So we're gonna run it like a workshop, and this is where my research has been developing. We got a lot of smart people out there, and we don't listen well. And so the methodologies that I've put together over the last 20 years or so are listening techniques, formal listening techniques. So tonight at the San Antonio Manufacturing Association, for example, we're going to have 110, 120 people there, all smart business leaders. I want to listen to them. So I'm going to present a little overview of Industry 4.0, and then we're going to do a real-time exercise to gather what they think their biggest gaps are. And then we're going to develop a consensus. And this is where organizations like SAMA and others around the country could really benefit from developing listening tools and then identifying the biggest gaps. Because what I'm going to do tonight is capture from the audience what they think their biggest gaps are, hand that over to you and your leadership team at San Antonio Manufacturing Association, and that should help you then put your agenda together for 2025.
Oh, yeah, because right now we're working our strategic plan for next year. The timing is just excellent for that, and we can roll that right in again.
Yep.
Let's kind of roll back where you and I first met back in the early 80s. I was hired from Hughes Aircraft Company back when it was owned by the Howard Hughes Foundation before it got purchased by General Motors, which was kind of an interesting experience in itself. But I got recruited out of General Electric Company to put the factory of the future for the AMRAAM missile, which they were competing against Raytheon on for the full-rate production program. So I was very in tune in trying to learn everything I could learn about Lean in 3.0. Coming out of GE, I was back in the Deming days and the quality circles and everything else. I had a great quality background, but I really didn't understand Lean that much. And you kind of walked me through it at Arizona State. I can remember early on because I put together a team to do this, and you showed me how to do IDEF models.
Yeah.
At the time, I was, wow, this is unbelievable. It was only years later that I realized we were doing value stream mapping, and we didn't know it at the time.
We didn't call it that.
We didn't call it that at all, you know?
So one of the things we learned in ICAM is it needed to be visual, and we needed to have methodologies that made sense. And one of the techniques that we developed was called IDEF, ICAM Definition Language, and it had 3 levels to it. It was the national standard for many, many years in terms of what today we call value stream mapping. The function modeling technique, the information modeling technique, and the dynamic modeling technique were the catalysts by which many companies would draw pictures of their company, draw pictures of how their processes were performed. And it's magical because if you draw that picture and you populate it with the metrics, as you should, and then you take a step back. You say, why in the world are we doing it that way?
Oh, of course.
Why are we doing it? I got to tell you a story. Okay?
I want to hear it.
Okay, so I teach a lot of courses. I love teaching class, and I love the students. And one semester I'm teaching a graduate class where we're applying the techniques that you're referencing. And so we're doing a lot of companies in Phoenix. We send out teams of students to do modernization planning for a small company. One company, name is immaterial, was taking worn-out Walmart automobile tires, grinding them up, mixing them with an emulsion, extruding them, and making a holy hose, a soaker hose, and cutting them in 50 and 75-foot lengths, putting connectors on them, and selling them back to Walmart. So this was a closed-loop ecosystem that existed. The CEO said, Dan, I need help. We're never on time. We're not making decisions that make sense. We're never meeting our schedule. So the team went out there, drew the value stream map, and one night they came to me and they were sweating bullets. You can't believe graduate students sweating. They said, we've analyzed the value stream map. The problem is everything has to go through the CEO.
Well, there's the problem right there.
They grew up as a small company where he would make all the decisions and they never changed the way they did business. How in the world are we going to tell the CEO that he's the problem? So I said, trust human nature. So tomorrow when we go out there, just post the value stream map on the wall and say, we'll come back next week and discuss this with you, but for now, let's just put it on the wall. And they did. Next week comes along, and now they're really sweating because now they got to discuss it. Before they get out there on the next Friday and open their mouths, the CEO says, you know what? I need your help. I'm the bottleneck. Look at this value stream map. Everything goes through me. I need your help in having you help me write myself out of the decision-making loop. That's the beauty of the value stream mapping, is it is visual and it works. It works. And people then can take a step back and make some really good decisions around it. Yeah.
Self-directed teams.
Self-directing teams.
That's what it's all about.
You got it. Yeah,
that's a great success story. I mean, and a lot of times in a business, when you start off small and you kind of grow, it takes a little bit. Either the leadership needs to change with the business, or the leadership needs to move on, and new leadership needs to come on. And that's an experience I've seen in my career working for a number of companies. The other thing, let's talk a little bit about group technology, because that was early on in my career too, and I learned that one through you too.
Yep.
Going in and analyzing a factory based on group technology.
So group technology is an old technique.
Been around for a while.
I did my dissertation on it in the early 70s.
Yeah.
I based my work on Opit's work in the 1940s. And the concept is very similar, very, very simple. You make similar parts. You make a lot of similar parts, but you never take advantage of it. And so my dissertation looked at Cincinnati Millicron data, and we analyzed it from the standpoint of what are the best number of manufacturing cells that could be put in place. Cellular manufacturing was new at the time also. And so we put these modern techniques in place at Millicron. That was my dissertation. So then we took that into the Air Force, and we looked at it from the standpoint of we have commonality that exists. We don't understand how to relate one part to another, so we put that methodology in place. And then we also said, but we have to start with design. So we began designing product families, not just products. And so most of the world-class companies today don't design products. They design product families. And if you look at the Boeing Aircraft Company, if you look at DeWalt Machine Tool, if you look at any company that's smart out there, they don't design a product anymore. They design a product family, which means then that I can leverage the design,
the commonality,
use the commonality, set up my manufacturing cells, and put that in place such that I get, in operational excellence parlance, flexibility, efficiency, and effectiveness at the same time. And that's what we're looking for. That's the book that I just wrote, is looking at how do I achieve flexibility, efficiency, and effectiveness at the same time. Mass production, great in efficiency, terrible in flexibility. The job shop, great in flexibility, terrible in efficiency. How do you get both? And that's that high volume, high mix, Joe Pine work that was published a long time ago called Mass Customization. And in it, he talks about the migration to looking at product families, setting up manufacturing cells, having flexible workforce, and it works. And it works. And you can do magical stuff doing that.
What's amazing, at M2 Global Technology here in San Antonio, which I was the president and CEO for a number of years, which I sold recently. But when we moved into our new building and we're doing 1,000 parts plus on the F-35 program, they were designed by Group Technology. So my challenge was to take those designs and figure out the most efficient way I could make it in a high-mix, low-volume factory. Yep. And I did. And as a result, we were recognized out of 1,400 suppliers for one of their top 25. That year, we did 54,000 pieces, and we had a 100% quality and 99.4% on-time delivery.
Wow.
And it works.
Yeah, it does.
It really does. So if you haven't paid attention to Group Technology, it's old technology, but it still works today.
And modern terminology is parametric definition, parametric
correct.
design. You can, but the history of it, you really need to get into the history of it. You need to get into the philosophy of it to really embrace it and to really take advantage of it. Yep.
The other thing you got me involved in early in my career over at the Hughes Aircraft Company is you got me on a team funded by, which is now called DARPA. At the time, it wasn't, on rapid prototyping.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, yeah. And this is old rapid prototyping.
Yeah.
This is not additive manufacturing.
But it's how we started.
It's how we started and how we got into it. It was great fun. And now, okay, so now let me bring you up to date. Rapid prototyping was magnificent, but it had some limitations as well.
That's for sure.
We did rapid prototyping at a lot of companies, Doug, and the customer said, hey, I want what you just developed in that rapid prototype. It was not battle hardened. It wasn't tested, and they needed it. They needed it so bad. They wanted that rapid prototype. Fast forward to today, when we talk about additive manufacturing, the ability to have economic order quantities of one cost effectively and 3D print them, the leverage is there to take advantage of rapid prototyping. But the next step, and this is where I'm trying to glean from the software world what they're developing, is something called Scrum. And Scrum takes rapid prototyping and does the next level of detail. So if the audience is paying attention and has an interest in rapid development of new products, they might want to look at Scrum. Scrum says, let's look at all the requirements. Instead of doing a rapid prototype of all of them to come up with a minimum essential functionality of a product, let's instead take a chunk of those requirements and establish the backlog that we have, and then in a 30-day cycle, create a production-worthy product that you can literally show the customer. And every 30 days, you're showing the customer what they're going to get, and then they give you feedback. Scrum is beautiful from the standpoint of being able to keep the customer engaged, being able to structure the build cycle, the ability to manage backlog, and be able to understand how long it's going to take to get that product into the marketplace. So in today's world, taking rapid prototyping that you and I grew up with to the next level, I'm bringing in now the software world who have played with Scrum for a long time, and now we're bringing that into the hardware world, and that's what's fun.
I can imagine.
Fun.
I can imagine.
That's fun.
I'm waiting to see the results.
Yeah.
I know you're going to talk a little bit about this tonight. How do you think dealing with 4.0, how AI is going to impact it?
Scary.
Yeah, I would think so.
Scary. My grandson is a sophomore at Stanford studying artificial intelligence, and the young man's brilliant, just absolutely brilliant. So when we look at AI, okay, the audience has to think about how many times have you interacted with an artificial intelligence engine today? And it's probably more than a handful of times. I was doing Zoom the other day with a conference call, and there's a new application in Zoom called the AI component to it, which literally listens to the conversation that's going on and extracts the key elements and publishes that in a Word document that you can now extract from after the conference is held. You get a Word document of all the key points. Ladies and gentlemen, it's better documentation of the meeting than I made with my yellow pad and my blue pen.
And I tried it the other day, and it just blew me away.
It blew me away. And so when we talk about, applications in automobiles and airplanes and cell phones, that's one thing. But when we're talking about conversations, that's a whole different thing. Now, that's the good side. It's incredible. There's a downside to it also. There is what I call ethical AI. And ethical AI, we're finding in the political world, people are making up stories that they think others have said, et cetera, et cetera. We have issues that need to be addressed. ChatGPT, our students got hold of ChatGPT, and they were creating documents they were submitting to their professors as reports. The challenge was that the bibliography didn't align with the document reference, and so we were easily able to define which ones were valid and which ones were not. There is a world that we have to understand called the ethical side of artificial intelligence, and once we figure that out, then it's gangbusters. But we got to master that ethical AI side as well as the advanced technical side. I told my grandson, and I love him dearly, if you study AI at Stanford and get your advanced degrees and don't master the art of ethical AI, I'm going to kick you in the butt.
You should.
And I will. He knows it.
Boy, and I tell you, it's moving fast.
Yeah, it's moving real fast. It's moving. You're going to see an application tonight.
Well, I know. You talked to me about it last night. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. You're going to see it tonight. He and I developed an application. He built an app this summer as an intern for a major corporation. They're applying it worldwide. This is a freshman at Stanford. This is the audience that we elderly individuals, as Doug and I are.
Seasoned.
We're
not elderly. We're seasoned.
Seasoned individuals. We've got to learn. We got to keep up. Somehow we got to keep up. Or maybe we just trust them, but that's stretching a little bit. So we've got work to do. We, seasoned individuals, have a lot of work to do. I'm just trying to keep up with my grandson.
I can imagine.
And it's fun.
I can imagine.
We have great conversations.
I'd like to be a fly on the wall on that. That's for sure. I want to talk a little bit, because we're talking about Lead With Me, a little bit about your leadership skills. How do you lead in today's world? How do you think we should lead?
Okay. Lead is different than manage.
That's correct.
Lead is different than manage. So I'm listening. I'm teaching class last night to my undergraduates in industrial engineering, and we're watching the Association of Manufacturing Excellence film on people-centric leadership. And for those of you that haven't seen the video, you can get it on YouTube. People-centric leadership comes from the Association of Manufacturing Excellence. And one of the speakers on there, I've forgotten who, Gordy or somebody, says the following: leadership in today's world is figuring out how to make the workforce successful. Okay? Not telling them what to do, but figuring out how to make everybody successful. Now, we're committed to making our customers successful. Sure. The corollary to that I've come up with is we also have to figure out how to make our suppliers successful. But it's a three-legged stool. customer success, supplier success. We also have to make our employees successful. Everybody has something that they can bring to the party. We have to figure that out. That's the difference between management and leading. Management is looking for where is their strength? What do they enjoy doing? How can they get their jollies out of... Charles Savage, a dear friend of mine, wrote a book decades ago called Fifth Generation Management.
I read it.
He said, if you read the back cover, I wrote the back cover.
I noticed.
Okay.
Yeah,
So Charles said in the book, if I can make work fun, I can double productivity. I love coming to school. I did it. I'm still doing it now. At my age, I'm still teaching class. I love coming to school. I love the students. The administrivia of academia, you can have that. I'll let you do that. But coming to school and seeing the eyes light up when they get something, when they get it, okay, that's what's fun. Now, leadership tomorrow is going to be a bigger challenge because of just what we were talking about, the artificial intelligence, the automation, the additive manufacturing, all the Industry 4.0 tools and techniques that we're installing. We're going to have to understand them. If we're going to help our folks be successful, we're going to have to understand them. And that, Doug, is not trivial.
No.
It is not trivial.
It's a big learning curve.
I am scampering like the dickens just to try and keep up.
And you're way ahead of it than I am. I'm just scratching the surface on it, and you've been in the middle of it for a while.
Yeah.
My next question is, how do you manage your work, especially with lifestyle balance?
Okay, so during and after COVID, people took a step back and tried to understand a work-life balance. Many of them spent a lot of time working from home. Many of them wanted to remain working from home.
Yeah.
After we were able to get the COVID issue under control. It's not gone, but it's at least hopefully it's under control. And what we're learning at Amazon and others is there's a time when I need private time to think. And if I have private time to think, I can do that anywhere. I can do it in the car, I can do it at home, I can do it wherever. But I also need public time. I need the ability to collaborate and share what I know so that I've learned something and then I build upon what someone else offers and I build upon that, and we come up with the best solution that we possibly can. I call that collaboration. Using Zoom as an example, it's hard to do that. Looking at one another in the eye, the body language.
You don't get it.
You don't get it. You don't get the body language of Zoom. Now, Zoom is a savior when it comes to being able to collaborate during COVID. And we've become dependent upon Zoom and other techniques.
Actually, too much.
But what I'm finding is that we need to have, and most organizations have realized this, time to collaborate. So I need private time to think. And then I need public time to collaborate. And I need that balance. And so most organizations, I'm going to use Amazon as an example, they have certain times where everybody needs to be at work, okay? They can be days, they can be the hours of the day, however you work it. And then if you want to give them the flexibility to have private time, they can do that wherever they are. But the public time, the collaboration time, the body language time, the looking them in the eye time, all that facial expression doesn't come across that well using a Zoom technique. And so when we talk about work-life balance, we've got to figure out how to get work-life balance. People can live their life effectively, but we have to understand also that public time, that collaboration time has to be there for us to really advance what we wish to address.
My last question is, how have you managed the equity and diversity in your career? That's a tough one.
It's a tough one because there's a lot of different thoughts going on out there. Florida has some real challenges to it. I look at Peter Drucker. I look at Peter Drucker and I say, I read Peter Drucker. I love Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker says, treat everyone as a knowledge worker. And by that, he means everyone knows how to do their job, and most people know how to do it better than others. That's who he calls a knowledge worker.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's go back to COVID, okay? The CEO had a role to play in managing and leading the organization. But the individual who cleaned the latrine, back an old term, you know what I mean, the bathroom, okay, the latrine, also had to master the art because COVID was being spread, and they had to make sure that that latrine was cleaned in the very best way possible. I consider that individual to be a knowledge worker, and I treat them all equally. So diversity, equity, and inclusion, I look at everyone as equal. Everybody brings something to the party.
Yeah.
Everybody brings something to the party. My job is to figure out what it is and then get it out of them, okay, and learn from them and listen to them. And you can't do that without having a lot of different viewpoints. If we're all talking the same story, if we're all, thinking the same way, we're going to get stuck. And we're going to last maybe a year or two, and then we're going to get stuck, and then somebody's going to rethink what we're doing, and they're going to change the game.
And I got to tell you a story about this. In my career, early on, I got exposed to Myers-Briggs, 16 different personality types. So I started I'm actually an instructor for that, but I actually started having teams go through Myers-Briggs training. And I had a team at the end of my production line that was my bottleneck. It was my bottleneck. And back then we had, and we still do, have self-directed work teams, but we would let them interview new candidates for their team.
Sure.
Well, lo and behold, 80% of the people on that team had the same Myers-Briggs. And that's why they couldn't think outside the box. So we did some reorganization a little bit, moved a few people around, cross-training, and lo and behold, we broke up the bottleneck. It's amazing how you can look at things, and everybody has something to bring to the party.
Look at it differently, and different viewpoints, and that's what I mean by building upon the ideas of others. Let them contribute in this collaborative mode. Then I contribute, then someone else contributes, and lo and behold, we get a really good solution. May not be perfect, but in the notion of Kaizen, in the notion of continuous improvement, I would prefer to get an excellent solution owned by 90% of the workforce rather than a perfect solution owned by 50% of the workforce.
Yep.
And those numbers, you can play with my numbers, but I think the point comes across.
You got it.
That the workforce has to own the change that's going on. Pat Zagarmi and others from Blanchard helped us understand how to lead that effort. But if they don't own it, they're going to push back.
That's right. And may convert back to the way they used to do it, too.
What we learned.
You walk away from it, 6 months later, it's back to where we started.
Well, we learned at AME. If you don't standardize on that work and they don't own it, you're going to lose 70% of the benefits in the first 2 or 3 months.
That's correct.
And that's waste.
Well, and that's why on a Kaizen event, you go out 90, you have feedback of the first 90 days because you've got to complete and get the total results.
Yep.
Well, Dan, talking to you today has been fun. I can tell you. I'm so glad that you came to San Antonio. You're a keynote speaker tonight at the CEO event, and we will be publishing your presentation along with this podcast, but obviously after we release the podcast.
There's a lot going on.
A lot going on. Well, thank you for coming to San Antonio.
My pleasure.
You got it.
Good to be back. Good to be back. Thank you.
Thank you.